Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Straight Jacket White Rabbit. My name is Adam, and I'll be your host as usual. Today we're going to be talking about tulpas, you guys. For those of you who don't know what a tulpa is well, let's start off where they're from. In Buddhist and theosophical traditions, it's a being, an object, a creature that is manifested into the physical world through meditation and like extreme focus and clarity of mind. They focus this purely on the idea of what they're trying to bring into the world. In the Buddhist culture, the reason they did this was to usually gain enlightenment or self-enlightenment. And these things would usually manifest in the form of a Buddha. Now, there have been reports from inside monasteries, mostly oral traditions, of lamas and people of this nature who have created tulpas that would actually manifest into the physical world, not just to where they could see them. It wasn't like they just saw it and no one else witnessed it, but other people witnessed the exact thing they brought into being appear. Not only that, but apparently some of them were able to maintain this for minutes, hours, days, and before it would, I'll say, fade away, the physical form at least. Now, in the 1920s, there was a woman who brought this idea back to the Western world, and we somewhat corrupted it, in my opinion. There is a modern tulpa following that's actually growing in the West. But it's now become more of a creating an imaginary being for yourself, for comfort, for friendship, for any number of reasons why these people do it. Here's the problem. Tulpas are what you focus on, supposedly, but they're not perfect. And there have been many people who have reportedly made a tulpa that they could see and hear. Basically, you can call it an imaginary friend. It's not... It's debated. I'm not going to say it's not. It's debated on whether or not this is all psychological or not. There are no scientific aspects. I want to get that clear. This is all pseudoscience-y type stuff. There's no scientific data that proves that this isn't some kind of like a psychosis that you give yourself or psychological issue people give themselves by focusing on this and believing in it and talking to these things as if they were real in order to bring them into the world to where they can see and hear them all on their own. Now, here's the thing about tulpas, you guys. With enough concentration and enough practice, you can get a tulpa to be completely autonomous. Mind of their own will, their own voice that you cannot control. That borders on very dangerous to me, because if you are not trained in the mental discipline it takes to control your mental space, this could lead to all kinds of things very similar to possession, or if not full-on possession itself. And I know we're talking about tulpas and not ghosts, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there have actually been cases where people have claimed that their tulpas have taken over their body while they were sleeping or unconscious, or just given over control in some cases to their tulpas. I think that has not only the potential to cause harm, or maybe even just not beneficial to your own mental health, But you have to understand, as someone who was a paranormal investigator and loves this life and actually would still like to be a paranormal investigator if I can get on an investigation soon, this type of thing to me is begging dark entities to possess you. If you're near the wrong type of spirit and you're inviting something in, something to talk to, something that you want, and those spirits can mimic that, they will. So that's a dangerous thing. It's all about doorways. I've explained this before many times with the Ouija boards and things like that. It's all about a willingness to communicate, as I've said numerous times. And you might not be communicating with what you're trying to communicate with. Some of these people who are in these new agey Western Tulpa'S group could very well put themselves in danger by communicating with something that is not an actual tulpa, but a negative entity. On that same hand, there could be positive entities who are just pretending to be the imaginary friend that these people have created inside of their own minds. Now, keep in mind, if you do this correctly, this is not just like an imaginary friend where you're pretending. This thing is something that you see and you hear all the time, and whenever it wants, if it becomes autonomous, okay, like it can just pop in and out whenever it wants. This is a very real thing, and there have been all kinds of debates on whether or not this is some kind of weird self-induced schizophrenia. There's been books written about this. There's been research papers written about this. So it's highly debated on what exactly goes on with these people. But there is a clear split that they can see in brainwaves when they're interacting with this tulpa, a real tulpa, I should say. There might be if you were interacting with a ghost. That's actually an interesting test to do one day. See if the brainwaves change when you're communicating with a spirit. But as far as a tulpa goes, you guys, like, it's dangerous to give anything that level of control in your mind. I think that if you were going to practice and be somebody who wanted to do this, it would be important to be able to have the control and the mental abilities to be able to banish or rid yourself of a tulpa if necessary, which from all reports that I've gathered is hard, if not in some cases impossible. There are people who have not been able to learn it, and they've had to deal with their tulpas for a very long time. Years. Some people have actually been committed and had to be drugged and put on medication because they could not block out the voice or the sight of the entity that they created in their minds. So this brings me back to the original Buddhists, okay? They're saying that they could, by focusing strong enough, hard enough, long enough, create a being that one person or many people focusing can see, and then would actually be able to manifest itself into a physical object. That is right there what I tell people about the true power of human perception and thought and concentration and focus. These things all unlock in your mind when you reach a certain point of enlightenment. And it goes one by one. It's like flipping switches. And once you know they're there, you can flip more and more as you open those doors. Now, tulpas, like I said, as far as the enlightenment aspect, the Buddhist traditional tulpas, I'm all for that, you guys. I'm all for self-enlightenment. I'm all for people who want to proceed cautiously with creating a tulpa. I want to make sure I say proceed cautiously because, like I said, this takes not just inner self-control and inner focus, but it also takes a purity of thought. You don't want negative emotions or baggage or whatever you want to call it to enter your mind while you're doing this, because that can portray negatively onto the tulpa you create. And that can be something that gives you a very unexpected outcome. And this is not like a click and erase meditation thing. You can't just click and edit, okay? It doesn't work that way. Once you've created the tulpa, you've created the tulpa. And like I said, there are a vast majority of people who have an extraordinarily hard time getting rid of their tulpa, if they can at all. There have been people who have, like I said, had mental breakdowns, had various amounts of prolonged hours of sleep deprivation, and I'm talking like days on end of no sleep, just because their tulpa will not shut up or leave them alone. The modern, like I said, the modern aspect, the westernized, the more westernized, the more western aspect of creating tulpas is, to me, a more dangerous practice, because I feel that there are a lot more undisciplined people. And I don't mean to say that they're all undisciplined or that none of them are disciplined enough. There very well may be some who are responsible to doing this, but it's just the fact that it is an extraordinarily risky practice, due to the fact that this, like I said, could also invite in malevolent spirits or spirits with mischievous intentions, making you think that you're communicating with something that is in actuality something else. Now, even if you create a tulpa, that in itself has a danger, because, once again, these things have been known to go wrong and completely drive the person insane. So I don't recommend by any means to anybody, and I don't endorse making your own tulpas, but it is an interesting concept that we can focus thought energy and life energy, just completely to a focal point where we are capable of creating an object out of seemingly thin air. Now, we all know, or those of us who are unplugged know, that energy is everything. There's never really somewhere that's truly nowhere or nothing. There's always something. There's energy all around us in the air we breathe. There's a flow around our world, around our bodies, of energy. And when you learn how to access this, you can do a lot of amazing stuff. Remote viewing is another example of this, you guys. I tell people all the time. That's how remote viewers do what they do. They access that energy grid. It's not, I can't even say the global energy grid, because it's beyond that. The universal energy grid, whatever you want to call it. And they are able to see at different points what exactly is going on. And people call it astral projection. You can call it whatever you want. The fact of the matter is you're using the energy to see where you are. Now, an experienced person with a tulpa can create a very detailed image that will show up on their own, like I said, completely autonomous. Their thoughts are not your thoughts. It is like the example I gave earlier. It's like giving yourself schizophrenia, basically. But these people have controlled it to an element where it's a positive focus. The responsible ones who are doing this for enlightenment and self-betterment, and who know the consequences, repercussions, and the safety of how to do this properly, can create something that will better them. It will better you. It will help you attain a more enlightened state of self-awareness and awareness around you. That being said, I don't think a lot of modern day people, and I really hate to say this, I have a lack of faith in some people, but I don't think a lot of modern day people have the responsibility or the self-control to do this properly, which is why I don't endorse it, you guys. But I do think it's a great thing that we're able to do with our minds. And I 100% believe in it. There have even been people who were not, some great lama, who were able to create them. And even though they weren't seen by others, they were seen by the person who created them. And the actual tulpa itself was able to move objects. People have seen other people who were like, yeah, look at my tulpa, he's right there. And they're like, I don't see him. And he's like, move that, and they move stuff. Once again, this could be a tulpa, and these people could really be that high up that they were able to manifest this, and at a strong enough level where it was able to interact with things on a physical nature in our world. That's entirely possible according to the Buddhist teachings. But like I said, there's a dangerous side, because if you're not doing this with the right intent and the right frame of mind and everything else, it can poison your tulpa, okay? It can warp it and bastardize it and make it not what you intended. And that can be very dangerous. As, just like I said a minute ago, these things also, trying to communicate, try to manifest a tulpa could lead you down a dark road of communicating with something that is not a tulpa, something that is of the spirit realm that is very negative, or possibly, if you're lucky, positive. But negative entities tend to feed on people who are looking for answers. And if they hear you and they think they can tell you that they have the answers, they're going to try to communicate. If you're trying to communicate with something in the veil, or something in the ethereal plane, or on that energy wavelength, they can sense this. Like I said, it's all doorways, man. It's all willingness to communicate. It's all a state of mind. And most people don't. I mean, it's like the age-old saying, be careful what you wish for. Most people really don't. Our minds go a lot of random places, and people full of anger and things are constantly thinking things they shouldn't be thinking, whether it be, I hate that person, or I wish you'd jump off a cliff, or whatever. Things like this, people do think of this, and these thoughts do run through angry people's minds, or upset people's minds, or people who are going through a hard time in their boyfriend and girlfriend, marriage, whatever. And you can't be trying to do these activities such as creating tulpas when your mindset is not in the right place. And any Buddhist will tell you that focus requires a lot of things, and one of which is inner peace. You need to be able to center yourself and calm yourself and keep your emotions that you want in check, and only allow access, I'll say, to the emotions you want access to at the time. You need to have yourself tightly locked down, is the way I put it. So, I mean, it's all up to you. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. You guys are all your own people. But as I said, I do not endorse doing it on your own unless you have a very good understanding of meditation principles and self-control and a lot of other things on lockdown. Just read into it, all I ask, before you attempt this, if you choose to do so. Now, I did touch on the ghost thing. I touched on the tulpas being manifested into reality. I've talked about them being like Buddha for enlightenment and things of this. I'm not saying that these people are manifesting Buddha. I'm saying usually they're manifesting something in the traditional sense of what you would think of when you would be communicating with a Buddha. It's just what theirs typically are, because that's usually what they are focusing on when they're trying to attain this. Now, that being said, I have covered some of the dark side. I have not covered the full dark side of the tulpa, you guys. In the Western tulpa world, there are people who are not in the right frame of mind, who are doing this for bad intentions, and they are creating dark tulpas who are turning around shockingly and attacking them. They're on Reddit forums asking for help. How do I get rid of my tulpa? Newsflash, you can't always, because if you're not completely in control of your stuff, you're going to be a victim. If you've created something with an aggressive attitude. And I'm not trying to say this to scare people who have created tulpas and now they're watching this going, oh God, what if I end up wanting to get rid of mine? That's not the intent here. But I'm telling you, this is not something you mess around with for the wrong reasons. You do not want to create one of these beings that are malevolent, because they will turn on you in a heartbeat. There have been cases, like I said, where doctors have mistaken this for schizophrenia and many other things, and then they've had to go back and re-diagnose because the treatments for schizophrenia obviously don't work because it's not schizophrenia. And this is becoming a bigger and bigger new age trend, is creating an adult imaginary friend. And I don't even like the language they use of imaginary friend, you guys. This, if you're truly creating a tulpa, and I've looked on these people's books and their websites and their forums, and let me tell you right now, they're not as crazy as you think. These people went through and dug up the hardcore background on what it takes meditation-wise to be able to focus your energy and create a tulpa. Some of these people will be able to create tulpas, you guys, and unfortunately, because they've bastardized it and made it like I said, an imaginary friend, because you're lonely or you just need a friend or you need a hug or whatever. That's not what this type of thing is used for generally, and it can turn very bad. There have been people who were literally so disturbed by the tulpas they create, just visually. I mean this, like not because they did anything mean or weird, just visually, because they didn't focus correctly, and they lost focus during the creation process and the manifestation process. And they've created tulpas that are so ghastly and disturbing looking that they're terrified of their tulpa they created, but now they can't stop seeing it everywhere they go. Once again, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. This is not something that everyone should do, just like I don't recommend doing seances if you don't know what you're doing, or any number of things to do with different realms and different entities that both ones we can create and that we used to be and that exist in other realms. There are different entities all around us, you guys, and even the ones, like I said, that we're bringing into being through extreme focus and meditation and clarity and all the things it takes to create a tulpa. You better make sure you know what you're doing. That's all I'm going to say, because it can go very bad. Now, on the other hand, there have been people and monks who have claimed enlightenment to a higher level simply by discussing inner truths and universally expansive ideas that open doors instead of close them, which is too much what our society focuses on nowadays, is closing doors. We're all about fighting with each other instead of opening up lines of communication and thoughts. And honestly, you guys, we need to evolve quicker than we are, because a lot of people don't use their mind the way that they should. They don't use their brain. They're too quick on their emotions. And emotions are great, you guys. Don't get me wrong. But when you act purely out of emotion instead of using your mind, you're going to get sloppy results every time. Now, that being said, I love emotion. It's what gives me my big heart. It's what gives my family their big hearts. And I love emotion, okay? I'm a very loving person. But it can't be the only tool in the toolbox you have to use up here too. A lot of people forget that. You've seen them, the Cro-Magnon guys in the nightclubs wearing, the tank top from the 80s and bulked out to here and looking for a fight just because they're big and they want to fight. I'm a huge dude. I was never like that. So I never understood the macho, I'm going to kick someone's butt mentality. But there are people like this, and they're not awakened mentally enough to even comprehend things like this, let alone be able to control it. And there are people, that's what scares me, is there are people of this ilk who are creating these things. Which brings me to my next point, you guys. If there was a dark group creating a tulpa, and I mean a dark group of people who knew what they were doing, who knew how to focus their energies and actually manifest a tulpa in real existence, that could lead to some serious implications in the world of cryptozoology. Think about all the monsters that have been reported around the world. How many of them could have been created by someone or a group of people who created a tulpa? Now, I'm not saying that anyone thinking about any object intently or intensely can make a tulpa, you guys. That's not the way it works, okay? Tons of people believe that Santa Claus is flying around throwing presents down chimneys. I don't see Jolly Saint Nick jumping down my chimney every 25th of December. Now, the reason for this is because just because you're thinking about something, people think of meditation and they think of thought. But any random thought, or just because you happen to think of it, or a lot of people happen to think of it, doesn't mean it's going to manifest. That's where the key of focusing your energy and focusing your thought and truly learning how to control your meditative state comes into play in this. So I hear people all the time, debunkers, going, well, like, people think about a lot of things and they don't just come manifesting out of thin air. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they're not focusing on it. They're not actually focusing on constructing it and building it. That's what a tulpa is. You bring this thing into being by sheer force of will through your mind. Now, like I said, just because millions of people think about a cheeseburger doesn't mean a cheeseburger is going to appear. It takes a process. But if there were people doing this, this could explain things like Slender Man. Do you remember the girls? There were a couple of girls somewhere here in the U.S., I can't remember, who were accused of killing another friend of theirs because they wanted to appease Slender Man. And they both claimed in court and lie detectors and numerous other ways that they believed Slender Man was real. What if it was an accidental creation of a tulpa or somebody else's creation of one? Things like this really get you thinking, because this means a lot of creatures we see could simply be here because we thought it on a focused level as a group of people, be it a small group of people, a large group of people. Maybe there are people and groups who are intent on bringing these things into the world for their own purposes, which would usually dictate doing it in shadow and secret, which would be why we wouldn't be able to know if they did it or not. So, like I said, there's always the possibility that things that we see in this world were created by people who know the process of creating a tulpa. Not just because they were thinking about it, but because they meant to create it. It kind of gives you a wonder of how many things in this world are here because we wished them into being. I mean, I don't know about you guys, man, but as a kid, I wished for an awful lot of stuff awful hard. Like, I concentrated on it. Like, I was dang near meditative if I wasn't, because little kids and things they want, I'm just saying, how many things could be accidentally brought into this world or manifested through some kind of power? Not to mention, what happens if somebody has an already higher psychic ability and they try to manifest a tulpa? Would this be a feat that was way easier for them because of their enhanced psychic abilities. And like I said, make no mistake, there are people in this world who have advanced psychic abilities, both telekinetically, also being able to just do things, like I said, remote viewing and things of that nature, mind reading, communication with the dead, like actual verbally communication with the dead, being able to see the dead. There are a lot of people with different psychic abilities in our world. And what I'm thinking is if you had one of these people with a higher natural ability, we'll call it, and you trained them on how to create a tulpa, I wonder what the end result would be. Would it be way easier? Would your tulpa be able to manifest physically for longer periods than what normally a tulpa is created for physically into our realm? Could they keep it here indefinitely? Is there some, you know what I mean? Is there some kid out there with psychic abilities who, if you teach him to create a tulpa, could he bring in things into the world on a permanent basis? Because tulpas have never been recorded, as far as I know, as being a permanent thing. They do go away. The problem with the westernized tulpas that stay with people and don't go away is because they're not physically manifested. The physically manifested tulpas can only be maintained for so long, and then they fade out. These people are creating a tulpa internally and not trying to manifest it physically. Or they're trying to manifest it physically and failing and getting stuck at the midway point where they can see it and they can hear it, but nobody else can. So it's all very interesting stuff, man. If you haven't read up on tulpas, go do so. They mention them, like I said, in a lot of folklore. A lot of modern fiction stories and TV shows mention tulpas. I think Supernatural had one. Yeah, matter of fact, I'm positive now. Yeah, they had I don't know, I couldn't even tell you what season it was in, but they did have an episode that was about a tulpa, although it was an odd construct. I can't remember the exact details of the episode right now, but look up some more on this subject if you're interested in it, because it's a total wild ride where these things can go down. If you really want to go down a rabbit hole, you can look up some of the Reddit forums about the tulpas, the modern westernization of these tulpa groups, and they go on to some scary stuff like My Little Pony tulpa groups and stuff. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down later at another time, trust me. But for now, this has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit, bringing you the world of the tulpa. Hopefully. At least we hope that's, if you're trying to communicate with a tulpa, that you're communicating with one and not another spirit. But for now, this has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit. I love and appreciate you all. In case you didn't see, we're above 1,000 subscribers now. I'm so excited about that, you guys. We did it. I'm going to be hopefully keep going onward and upward, thanks to all of you. And I hope to see you on my next show. For now, good night to all of you, and much love.